Welcome to The Explainer. You know, every single time you click a button, tap a screen, or swipe through a feed, there's this incredible, hidden conversation happening behind the scenes. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and show you how the web really works. So let's start with a scene that's probably super familiar. You're at a cafe, someone pays with their phone, boom, a receipt shows up on the tablet, and a second later, your own phone pings. It's this seamless flow of information that we just totally take for granted. It all just works. But we've all been there, right? That moment when the system goes down, and suddenly everything just grinds to a halt. That little breakdown is actually a window into this massively complex, interconnected world that's usually invisible. To figure out why it breaks, we first have to understand how it all fits together. Okay, so to really get this, the first thing you need to know is that not all websites are created equal. They basically come in two main flavors, the static ones and the dynamic ones. So on one side, you have static pages. The best way to think of them is like a digital poster. The information's there, it's fixed, and pretty much everyone sees the exact same thing. But then you have dynamic web applications. Now these are more like a real conversation. They're interactive, they change based on who you are, and they actually respond to what you do. All right, let's start with the part that's right there in front of you, the front end. This is literally everything you can see and touch in your browser. You know, an engineer at Twitter put it perfectly. He said the front end is just the user interface. It's that list of tweets you're scrolling through, the buttons you click to like or reply. It's the whole visual experience designed for you to interact with. And this whole experience is really built with just three core technologies working together. You've got HTML, which is like the skeleton that gives the page its structure. Then comes CSS, which is all the style, kind of like the clothes and the colors. And finally, you have JavaScript, which brings it all to life, making the buttons actually do something when you click them. But for an app to do anything really useful, like saving your profile or processing an order, it needs a brain. And that's the back end, the hidden engine that does all the thinking. Right. This is the powerhouse that you never actually see. The backend handles all the heavy lifting. It's managing the databases, running the important logic, talking to other services. Every time you log in or buy something, it's the backend that's doing all the work. To manage all this stuff, developers have a whole toolkit. They use powerful programming languages like Python or Ruby to handle the logic, like what happens when you add an item to your cart. And then they use databases with languages like SQL to store and organize all the important info, everything from your user profile to the entire store's inventory. Okay, so we've got the part you see, the front end, and the brain behind it, the back end. But the modern web isn't just one app, it's a whole universe of apps. So how do they all talk to each other, especially when they're from totally different companies? Well, the answer is something called an API, which stands for Application Programming Interface. And honestly, the best way to think about an API is like a menu at a restaurant. It shows you exactly what that software can offer and gives you a clear, standard way to ask for it. So let's take an app like TweetDeck. It doesn't actually store any tweets itself. When you hit refresh, its backend instantly makes a request. It basically orders the latest tweets from Twitter's official API. The Twitter API finds the data, sends it back to TweetDeck, and bam, it shows up on your screen. And this whole trip happens in the blink of an eye. So all this, the front end, the back end, all these APIs zipping back and forth, it all has to run somewhere. The code and the data have to physically live somewhere, which brings us to the very foundation of the modern web. And that somewhere is what we call the cloud. But the cloud isn't some magical, fluffy thing up in the sky. It's really just a way of using a gigantic global network of physical computers over the internet, instead of trying to run everything on one server in a closet. As an engineer from Facebook once explained, for any piece of data you use online, there is a physical hard drive spinning somewhere in the world. The cloud is just a really clever way to manage all those physical servers without you having to worry about it. It just makes a very hard problem much, much easier. But here's the catch. All of this interconnectedness, all these moving parts, it's what makes the web so incredibly powerful, but it's also what makes it fragile. When just one piece of this giant puzzle breaks, it can send ripples across the entire system. And this isn't just a theory. We saw a really scary example of this in 2022. A single bad network update at a huge Canadian telecom company caused a chain reaction that took down the entire country's network. We're talking payments, web apps, even access to 911 services, all gone. It just shows how much we rely on every single link in that chain. So because this risk is so real, developers don't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. They actively plan for failure. They build systems with all these layers of protection, having backup systems ready to take over instantly, releasing updates to small groups first to catch bugs, and using automated alarms that can shut down a failing part before it takes everything else down with it. So now that you know the pieces, the front end you see, the back end that thinks, the APIs that connect everything, and the cloud they all live on, you can look at any website or app in a totally new way. So next time you're scrolling, ask yourself, okay, what here's the poster? And what's the conversation? What's really going on behind my screen?